Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NTI Pod Talk. My name is Dianne Koehler, and I'm the Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute. This Pod Talk is our opportunity to have fun conversations with interesting people who have interesting things to say about nutrition, food, and health. I talk to NTI instructors, students and grads, to health industry professionals, to farmers, and anyone else who has an interest in nutritional wellness. While many of our listeners come from within the NTI community as students and grads, we also have prospective students who tune in. And to those listeners in particular, I hope you find that the people we talk to inspire you to finally make the jump to pursue your passion and come to school here at NTI. So without further ado, let's get on with the show. Hi there, this is Dianne Koehler, the Director of Nutrition Therapy Institute. Welcome back to another edition of the NTI Pod Talk. Today, I am excited to have Emma Tekstra on with me, and I met Emma last fall. We had some really interesting conversations. We were at a really wonderful conference where we were learning lots about health and wellness, and I just really struck a chord with Emma and wanted to have her on the podcast. So Emma is a global health consultant and independent health researcher, and her history, her work history is in global actuary and benefits consulting. So Emma, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I am so happy to talk to you.
Oh, that's great. Happy to be here.
Yeah. This is actually a conversation that we have never really had on the podcast from this point of view. So I'm looking forward to this, and I hope people will enjoy it. So let's just start off because I want to get a little bit of your history. So by training and profession, your work history is in actuary consulting. So you're going to have to explain to us what that means, and then we will kind of get into the conversation of how does that actually result to what we do here at NTI. So tell us about what that means and what you have done and have done your work history.
Okay, so yeah, not many people know what an actuary is. So yeah, it's a profession. A lot of exams, a lot of math, a lot of data science. Officially, an actuary studies risk. So you'll find a lot of actuaries in insurance companies, different kinds of insurance companies, and looking after pension plans. So that's kind of where I started. It really isn't quite as nerdy as it sounds. It's a little nerdy. But so in pension plans, you have to figure out when people are going to die, basically. So if you've been working for a company and you retire at 65, especially in the old days, companies would guarantee a pension. So you'd get like 60% of your salary for the rest of your life. Well, how long's the rest of your life? So we'd help the employers figure out how much money they had to invest and put away to be able to pay those pensions. But I quickly found out that I was much more interested in the people at the end of those pension policies and insurance policies. So I ended up broadening and getting into other kinds of employee benefits and just consulting on what the employees really needed from their employer.
Gotcha. And so this is something you did working for a company, right?
Yeah. So I've worked for the same company for the last 25 years, a big global insurance broker and consulting firm. And so I've been working for the same company, but I kind of changed my focus a bunch of years ago. So just a bit of background how I got to focus on healthcare, really. So my now 19-year-old son, who was doing amazing at a big 4-year college studying engineering, when he was 5, he was having a lot of health problems, and he was eventually diagnosed with Asperger's and ADHD and had all sorts of other problems. I was a busy executive traveling all over the world, and I had all sorts of health problems. They thought I had lupus at the time, stuff like that. So I started researching, and I actually had wanted to be a doctor when I was a teenager. Brain surgeon, and my father had taught me out of it. So it was very natural for me to slip back into that because the doctors are prescribing all sorts of drugs, and I'm thinking that just doesn't make sense. So I started getting into all the data and what an actuary can do. The background that we have is we're very, very good at statistics. Doctors aren't. Your typical doctor doesn't understand math. Your typical journalist doesn't really understand math, and they put out all these headlines, and the public, they think, well, here's a new headline, it must supersede the old headline.
Right.
And what an actuary can do is kind of take all of the available data and sort of synthesize it, bring it all together, and sort of generate some conclusions from that. And so that's really what I was focused on. Through that, I ended up healing myself, healing, my kid. None of us take any medications at all since then, many years now. And then I wanted to apply what I'd learned in the corporate world, because I'm thinking, we're doing it all wrong. This is actually, we could really turn things around and make employees way more healthier. So that's when I took that into my corporate consulting, and it was a giant company I worked for, so I could move into a slightly different focus. So that's what I'd been doing for about the last 10 years. And I moved into that new focus.
Nice. Okay. All right, good. That actually really helps me understand a little bit more about, what you do and how that applies to health. And we are definitely very different in your love and appreciation and capability of being able to do statistics. Statistics is not anywhere in my wheelhouse. So that's awesome. All right. So you sort of introduced it, but I would love it if you could talk more about, the ways in which your work history and looking at health from that statistical point of view, how did that provide you with insights into actually what is health and what's, health and wellness, and what you were seeing in your work with your corporate clients?
Yeah. So, okay, so I'll give you an example. I was sitting in a meeting. This is a long, long time ago, actually. And my work used to be focused on global. So it used to be focused on sort of non-US, outside the US. And I'd partner up with our US consultants a lot. And I was sitting in this meeting, big, well, actually well-known company. We work with a lot of the Fortune 1000 companies. And they'd sent out these questionnaires to all their employees called a health risk assessment. Used to be very, very typical the last 10 or 20 years, and is sort of the foundation of a good wellness program. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But they sent out all these questionnaires, and it transpired that about 60% of their employees had a cholesterol level that was higher than deemed optimal. And so we're sitting in this meeting, an HR meeting with HR and benefits people, and they're like, oh, we've got to change the design of the health plan and make statins much more, affordable. We've got to reduce the copays on statins. And I was like horrified. But I was like not the US consultant, so I was just kind of like observing this part of the meeting, and it just got me thinking that that is not wellness. Statins and flu shots are not wellness. That is not what is going to make your employees healthier. It's understanding the foundations of health. So things like good nutrition is absolutely foundational to what is going to be good health. And everything actually kind of came to a head for me with COVID in the last few years, because I was working outside of the US and hearing how other countries are dealing with this and getting supplements and very cheap, well-known long-term anti-parasitics out to their employees, and people were fine, getting through COVID. Some weren't. If they were already very unhealthy, of course they weren't. But a lot of people, it was going to be managed. And in the US, I was like shot down. And it was like, no, we need drugs, and we need vaccines, and we need all this other things. And eating well is not going to help you. And it was just really strange. So that's when I ended up saying, okay, the paradigm that I want to educate our clients about and educate employers about, I'm not going to be able to do that in a big global multinational company. So that's why I went out on my own to do this and push this forward.
Mm-hmm. Well, so, going back to your original aha moment, really what it came down to is companies, and I'm paraphrasing here, and correct me if I'm wrong from what I'm getting from you, but companies were interested in the way that they saw to reduce their healthcare costs, that they were spending on their employees, was to reduce the cost of the prescription medications that the vast majority of the employees were on. And that, what to them was the linear pathway of how we can reduce our healthcare costs. And you came to the conclusion that, well, rather than focusing on reducing the cost of the prescription meds, we need to actually figure out ways to truly implement a healthcare program, or something that has to do with getting to them before they actually need the prescription. So being more preventative than reactive after they get a prescription. Am I correct in my?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly part of it. It's all where the emphasis is. So certainly the employers recognize that the part of the biggest healthcare spend is the pharmaceuticals, and they're very expensive. And so they recognize that, but they think, they think, yes, let's get them before they get sick. But then their attitude is, well, once they're sick, you put them in the health plan and you get them on medication. So it's like they were treating them separately. So there's a lot of fantastic wellness programs out there. I'm not saying there aren't. I think we're going to get into, what is a good wellness program. We'll get to that. And so they were absolutely doing that. But by saying, okay, well, now they're triggered. Now you've got a diabetes diagnosis. Well, now you're over here. And now you're in the conventional health plan, and it's only pharmaceuticals that can help you. So, and what I'm saying is it's all of it. And what I'm saying is employers need to lead with wellness, even when you've got a diagnosis and you're already sick. Because what the paradigm is that only conventional healthcare is scientific medicine. That was the word that came in the 20th century to say this is why you need pharmaceuticals. It's scientific medicine. But there is tons and tons of science that shows nutrition, supplements, all of the movement, water,
mindset,
water, all of these things can actually reverse disease. And so I just feel that employers aren't going far enough in their wellness programs, and they are treating them in a siloed nature compared to how they're offering, or the attention that they're giving to the health plan, the money that they spend on a health plan. And they typically have 1, 2, 3 team members on the HR team that solely focus on the health plan. And monitoring the health plan, figuring out what the design of the health plan should be. And they have maybe one or half a person that kind of does wellness in their spare time. And I just want to switch that paradigm to lead with wellness and education of employees, and what does true prevention look like, and rather than kind of treat them separately.
Mm-hmm. So do you think there is I don't know if the word is intentional, like why do they not see that why don't they put the focus on wellness? Why don't they see that they are one and the same? Is it a lack of understanding, or does it go back to what you were saying, that they just don't believe that wellness, all of those things, nutrition, supplements, mindset, movement, all that kind of stuff, that isn't evidence-based, and so that they're not, is that truly the only reason, or are there other reasons?
There's a lot of competing, it's an industry, right? So healthcare has got a fantastic marketing machine behind it, all the ads on TV. And so the mindset is that alternative care and diet and supplements, they're not going to be as effective as medication. So that's definitely part of it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. So, so you're working on getting companies to recognize wellness in a more comprehensive way. And so can you talk about what would and what should a good wellness program include? What kind of things?
Absolutely. And part of the problem I should have mentioned actually is measuring the ROI, the return on the investment. Okay, and if you're not doing it properly, if you are doing it in that siloed way where you're paying for some wellness programs over here, but then as soon as somebody has a diagnosis, you send them to the health plan, because you're not doing it in an integrated way, it's very difficult to come up with a return on investment. And that's where employers say, well, why am I spending money on wellness? I'm not getting anything out of it. Okay. But as I say, still, there's a lot of fantastic wellness programs out there. So certainly the core, there's kind of 2 angles. There's a philosophy, which is are you integrating this holistically? And then there's the actual strategy. And so the actual strategy, lots of programs, so programs and policies, and we'll get into what some of those programs can be, but to reverse disease and things like that, and educate on good nutrition. So lots of programs, but you've got to have leadership input, and you've got to have all your stakeholders. This can't just be the HR team. This has to be right up to the CEO and others in the C-suite, really embracing that this is the culture of our company, a culture of wellness. Consultants will talk about. You need to focus that in your company. So you need the leadership engagement. You need stakeholder buy-ins. You've got to be having focus groups and surveys with your employees. What are their issues? What are they finding? What do they need help with? So you've got to have all of those pieces. You've got to have some good technology. So there's a lot of fantastic apps out there, a lot of these companies that we'll talk about with a lot of great technology. It's got to be very integrated with all your HR systems and all of that technology. There's got to be really good communication and engagement. You can't just put in a policy or let's say a diabetes reversal program, and if you don't communicate it really well, if I'm an employee, well, I go to my doctor, I get my medication, I'm good. What is this other thing? I don't understand. So there's got to be really good communication, education, constant engaging the employees. You can't just do it at annual enrollment and say, oh, hey, we've got some of these other programs over here, and then not talk about it for a year. So that's really important. And then lastly is the measurement. So you've got to have ongoing measurement, what's working, what's not working. In a business environment, you always need that ROI. And so the only way you're going to find that ROI is if you're constantly measuring and tracking, in the example I had started, 60% of my employees supposedly had cholesterol that wasn't, optimal. So how is that going? Let's measure these questionnaires, and let's monitor over time, and then make tweaks over time. So that would be, from a strategy, a really solid corporate wellness program. And there's lots of them. There's a lot of fantastic award-winning wellness programs in the market. But where I keep saying where I think they fall short is the overall philosophy. And the overall philosophy is that you can reverse disease. It's not that wellness is just focused on preventing disease and then you're on conventional healthcare. It's wellness first.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, good. So I am wondering, statistically, and I'm not asking for an exact numerical number, but I hear about big companies, big companies who have quote unquote wellness programs, and you think about they have whatever, they have their own kitchen, where employees eat, and they've got a chef there, and maybe they've got some activities, whatever, ping pong tables, I don't know, activities set up so that employees can take breaks, and they build in break times. And that is quite honestly the limits of my understanding of what these corporate philosophies might have. But how common is it for corporations to be more on the wellness, like top down, all the way through wellness mindset, versus corporations that are like, you go to work, you sit in your cubicle, you do it, and your health stuff is outside of work. We don't, that's not any of our business. Is it more on one side than the other? Is it growing on one side than the other?
Yeah, it's absolutely growing. So the last 10 or 20 years, it has mainly been the big companies, the Fortune 1000 companies, and then smaller and smaller companies are saying, we have to do this. Our healthcare costs are out of control. Just to give you a sense, in the typical employer in the US, the cost of the health plan is on average up to 40% of the salary that they're paying an employee. So if you're working in a factory and you're earning a certain salary, your employer is paying another 40% of that, almost half again, in healthcare costs. And they are recognizing, more and more employers, smaller and smaller, are recognizing they've got to do something. The things that they've been doing, so that they'll do what I call moving money around. So they'll say, okay, we're going to encourage our employees to get a generic version of the drug instead of the name drug. Or we'll encourage them to go to centers of excellence if they need back surgery, things like this. And I call it moving money around. It's still within conventional healthcare. It's not going to really move the needle on those runaway healthcare costs. Right. And then what's transpired the last 3 years is just they're just like skyrocketing. And so I think, well, I know I've seen, so my old company, WTW, they do an annual survey. And I think, don't quote me, but I think it was around about 60% of employers, and this is employers of all sizes, had wellness as one of their strategic priorities, most important strategic priorities in the next 3 years, I think they were asking. So it is getting more and more important, not only, the great big companies, but much smaller companies. So under 5,000 employees, even under 1,000 employees. Under 1,000 employees, there's only so much they can do. But I think they can actually do more than they think they can do, because it doesn't cost a lot to educate employees. You don't have to have a chef and a kitchen and you don't need all of those things, but you can, educate and put out some communications, very, very low cost. And I think employers are really best placed to change this paradigm in this country. It is really so sad. I see so sad. As an actuary, again, I'm not only looking at the health side, I'm looking at life insurance and disability, and the levels of young people dying, under 50s dying, is unheard of. It's just skyrocketing the last 3 years, and disability, people that can't work anymore because of disabilities, which might be long COVID or long flu or whatever you want to call it. They've got these chronic illnesses and they can't work anymore. And so I think it is being recognized in all sorts of companies. And I think it's the responsibility of the employers that they can really turn things around.
Wow. Okay. That is awesome. And that perfectly opens the door for, what is the connection between what we're talking about here and the community here at NTI, which our community is, we're training people in nutrition therapy. So many of our nutrition therapist masters, which is the title that our graduates get, they, already come in knowing that they want to work in the field of corporate wellness, or maybe after hearing this, they're like, oh, wow, I didn't know that this might be a possibility. So, they want to work in corporate wellness. And what I'm hearing from you is that this opportunity is incredible. Like, the growth in this field is incredible. And so therefore, our graduates do have lots of ways that they can get into working in corporate wellness. So let's talk about some of the skills they should have, the, steps they could take. How do they proceed in this goal of working in corporate wellness?
Yeah. And we started talking just before that I see, and just thinking about it, that if you have a grounding in nutrition, you are absolutely best placed to be one of the best wellness coaches or wellness consultants or wellness champions. Those are different positions. So a wellness coach, so some of the companies that you could work for we'll get into, but a lot of them, they have wellness coaches. So an employer will hire a company that has wellness coaches and their employees, they will pay or subsidize, and you could be a wellness coach. Or you could work for a company, so one of these employers, and you could be running or managing the overall wellness program. And then you could be just consulting to different people or to employees. So there's lots and lots of different opportunities. But I think that the nutrition as the foundation is really important, because a lot of the other skills you can learn. So I mentioned the parts of a good wellness program. So things like leadership interviews. It's a conversation. You don't, you make some notes and you decide what you want to go and ask the CEO about, and you go in and you do it. Even measurements and surveys and focus groups and things, those kinds of skills you can pick up very easily and very quickly, and just by seeing others do it and working in a team. But real nutrition, and I call what you do at NTI real nutrition training, because there's a lot of bad nutrition training out there that I see. The people that I've worked with over the last 30 years, or I've met, that think they're a nutritionist and they know what they're talking about, it's based on reductionist science. It's looking at calories, and it's looking at the evils of saturated fat and all that nonsense. And so if you're a real nutritionist, and the grounding that you have and understanding what creates health, that takes a long time. You've got to go through your program. That takes a long time. But all the other skills, I think, can be picked up very easily. And the other thing is that if you're working either for one of the companies that have wellness programs or the employer that's buying them, you're in a team. right? So you're working as part of an HR team, perhaps, and they've got all of those skills because, they have to talk to the CEO about all sorts of different things, and they're measuring all sorts of different things, and they're doing the communications about all sorts of different things. So a lot of those other skills, you'll have team members, or you can learn from them. So yeah, I mean, I think you have the skills that you need.
Right.
And I think, we'll talk about the companies. I think you might want to start at certain kinds of companies to build up and understand corporate wellness. Because yeah, there's a lot to know. There's a lot to it. You'd be amazed at some of the programs these companies have. So you'd need to pick up some of that. And maybe when you've worked for some of these companies that offer the programs, and then you can say, hey, I'd like to go and work actually in one of these employers, because then you see the difference. You're then directly working with employees, and you see people turn their health around. And to me, it's like fantastic. That's really good,
Yeah.
good stuff to work for.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Good. So there are companies that do this, right? They are the what would it be? They would be like the contractor that the corporations are hiring to do the wellness program, right? That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's different. So
Okay.
there are consultants. So
Okay.
somebody might hire me to consult kind of on the strategy. But what
Right.
I think is most interesting for your graduates, because without all of that extra background, is I call them vendors. I don't think they like being called vendors, but we call them vendors. An employer might hire a few of them. And so some of these, they're in different categories. So some of them now that I really love, they're basically providing nutrition, good nutrition. Really great companies. So there's a company called Food Smart. They used to be called Zipongo. I love them then, called Food Smart. And an employer can hire them, and it's a program that an employee can join. And they get access to a nutritional coach that helps them with whatever the program is that they need to be on, and coaches them. They might speak to them once a week. There's a fantastic app that you can go through and get all of that. So Food Smart is one. Eat Love is another one. So we have Season Health. There's a startup I've just started talking to called Atuvera. There's loads of them. I mean, there's literally loads of them, but that's a category I would call the nutrition first companies, where, and as I say, they all have fantastic technology and apps, and but they need coaches. And so they probably have the qualified nutritionists that help them plan the menus and help train all the coaches. But to do, either if you want to be a coach or be that, the nutrition expert. So those are kind of like the nutrition first companies. Then you have a whole bunch of companies that I don't love too much, but they're like focused on weight loss. And they've been around a long time, more than 10 years, focused on weight loss. And so there's a few of them. So Moj, Monj, I don't even know how you say that, Real Appeal. I'll give you a list maybe after that you can put in the text of the podcast. But so there's a bunch on like weight loss and things like that. And then they might include movement and some other things as well. Then you get into also actually been around, several years, I would say, the diabetes management companies. So that was a big one, because you might have a company and 60% of their employees are pre-diabetic or diabetic. And, the drugs, it might be the number one drug that the health plan is paying for. So the diabetes management companies are like Livongo. So a lot of them, as they sound. There's Vida, Vida. There is, and there's another one that begins with a V. Virta, Virta. A whole bunch of them, and they're focused on diabetes management, and a lot of the big employers already have these in place, and so they hire them, and typically they will look at the health plan, see who is taking metformin or some of the diabetes drugs, and then they will communicate to those folks, hey, we've got this other program and we can reverse your diabetes and get you off the medication. So a whole bunch of diabetes ones. The newer ones, which I like particularly because they're getting into functional medicine. And we could get into that if we had time, but the functional medicine, where they are looking at things like autoimmune conditions and other kinds of chronic diseases. And so Well Theory is an awesome startup just getting into the corporate space, where if you've been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis or rheumatoid arthritis or something like that, or even if you've not got a full diagnosis, but you've got all these symptoms and you see lots of doctors and nobody's giving you a label yet, you can go onto one of these programs. And again, they will work with all of your lifestyle. So they will coach you on what you're eating and what supplements you're taking and all of this, and they will get you off any medication, even over-the-counter medication, and they'll reverse the disease. So Well Theory is one of those. CIBA, CIBA, is another one. Parsley Health is one. I just love the name of Parsley Health. Let's see, Mimey is another one. And some of them will work with individuals, not even employers. And I advise these companies. That's part of what I do now. And I tell them, you've always got to have a really good consumer offering, because even if they're going through an employer, and their offering has to have a few extra bells and whistles if it's going to be like an employer program, you've got to have really good one-for-one support to an individual. So a lot of them have a retail option as well, that anybody can just sign up to these programs and they will get to speak to their coach once a month or whatever. Some of them have prescribing doctors on staff as well, and so they can help you get off the medication. But some of them don't. Some of them, all of their coaches are nutritionists and people with those kinds of background or a degree in public health. And then they will say, okay, we're going to change your lifestyle first and improve your health, and then you can go back to your regular doctor and they'll see that you're doing so much better, and they can titrate you off the medication. So, hopefully it gives you a little bit of a sense. Some of the new ones, actually, there's a digestive category now, which I kind of don't get that. But part of the frustration with me is that there's all these separate categories, and employers now have to hire or purchase several of these, and it can be very confusing to an employee. Well, I've kind of got these symptoms. Well, which one do I talk to?
Right.
So there's a company called Oshi Health, OSHI, Oshi Health, and they're focused on digestive issues. Well, yes, that might include like Crohn's disease and things like that, or it might just include bloating, things like this. So, so who do you go to? Do you go to the one that, you've got an actual diagnosed autoimmune condition? Do you know that your nutrition is not quite right, but maybe you don't want to go to the digestive person yet? And for me, I would love to design a whole new approach that incorporates all of these things. So, it's almost one company, one set of coaches, and the coach can look at you and get to know you and your lifestyle and what's going on with you and coach you, and doesn't need to put you as a label that you're pre-diabetic or you're, got an autoimmune condition or you've got a digestive condition. You're not feeling well, and we've got to get you feeling better.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So, for our community, for our listeners, students and grads, I did ask Emma to provide us a list of names of companies specifically, so that if this is something you're interested in, you have the name of the company, you can go to their website, look at their employment opportunities, et cetera. And as Emma said, she will provide us with a list that we will include with show notes. And thank you so much for doing that, because I don't know if it's just me who wasn't aware of all of this out there, but, if anyone in our, student and graduate community is interested in pursuing this, I think it's helpful to at least have some ideas, some names of companies that they can look for to see if they're hiring or what their hiring requirements are, et cetera. So thank you so much for providing those names, because I wouldn't even know like the first place to start looking. So it's great.
And literally all the names, that's tiny amount of what is out there. There's literally hundreds of these companies.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And, as you say, like, it's great that they exist and they're providing these services for corporate wellness as well as on the consumer side, as you mentioned. But also, as you say, there is a potential for now this, like, be careful what you wish for, right? Now this potentially has some pitfalls in that now it's becoming a different reductionist way of delivering wellness, right? Like digestive wellness, autoimmune, I agree with you that the ones that are more comprehensive, more holistic in nature are probably going to be the ones that potentially are more successful. I don't know. But, at the same time, 73% of the population either has diabetes or is at risk, of pre-diabetes and doesn't even know it. So a diabetes specific wellness program, that makes sense. And, the number of people who have gut health issues is huge, massive. So that makes sense. But geez, there is some overlap between both of those things.
Yeah.
Right. So, maybe you'll start a wellness company and
Yeah. I mean, that's my advice to them. I mean, it's hard. They're startups, right? And when you're a startup, you've got to find your niche, and you've got to find data. I mean, this is part of what I advise them. So Atuvera, I mentioned there, I love the concept. They're literally only just getting out to pilots now, where they're getting out to individuals and they're trying to turn their health around. But so you've got to have good data. So you kind of got to focus, because if you go too big, it's again getting to that statistical analysis that you can come up with just about any headline if you look at the data a certain way. So actually, you kind of need to focus to actually be able to prove that everybody on my program is getting off medication. And when they stay with the conventional health plan, they're on medication indefinitely. So you have to kind of focus. So it's kind of a catch-22 situation. So as I say, as startups, they've got to find a way to differentiate themselves and get some traction to get out there. But then they have to, I think, broaden themselves a little bit. Once they've established themselves, then broaden themselves a little bit. And maybe then if they're working with an individual who's got a diagnosed autoimmune condition, well, then maybe I can help your kids or your spouse who are just got some, whatever symptoms, and get into the education at that point, and then start broadening themselves. There are a couple out there that are sort of trying to bring on, so functional medicine doctors. So part of the, if we've got time to go there. So functional medicine, I love. So functional medicine, it tends to be doctors who started off as MDs. So they've got all that conventional training, and then they figured out it wasn't working for typical chronic disease. And so they really focus on supplements and diet and lifestyle as well. And then they'll also look at things like the microbiome, which is so important, what's going on inside you, all of the good bacteria, and have you decimated your microbiome through all the medication or antibiotics you've been on. And so functional medicine is kind of the best of both worlds. The problem is that a lot of functional medicine doctors are not included on the network health plan. And a lot of people can't afford them. Just can't afford paying for them out of pocket. So I think, yes, there is a bit of, if anybody knows Dr. Mark Hyman, who is, very outspoken about this. And I've seen recently, he's been speaking to corporate organizations. There's an organization called the Business Group on Health, and he recently spoke to them. So I think the tide is turning. But I think it's going to be employers that can move that needle. And I think it's people that understand what truly creates health, like your graduates, that are really going to be part of that movement of change, is what I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. All right. Well, so you've, mentioned a little bit about what you do, but let's talk most specifically about what is your focus? How do you share your knowledge and your skills with the world now? And, you're not working at your corporate job. So what are you doing and how are you sharing your information?
Yeah. So I left my corporate job last year mainly to focus on writing a book, because I was so frustrated about talking about all of this, but you can't get the full message across in headlines. And a lot of people in business, they'll, a one-page PowerPoint, and you don't really get past page one. And I was so frustrated because the evidence is there, the science is there. So I've written a book. So I took 6 months to write a book with over 300 scientific references to explain all of this. And there's a whole chapter on nutrition. Your graduates would love it. So I talk about it step by step. So the foundation and the background and how we got to where we are is part one. And then part two literally goes into a lot of chronic health conditions. I mean, it covers a lot of ground. So, infectious diseases, and then all different chronic diseases and heart disease and cancer and autoimmune and all of that, and mental health, a whole chapter on mental health. Because in the corporate space, there's some wonderful, these vendors that focus on mental health, and they have mental health therapists and things like this. But a lot of them, they don't touch on what are you eating. Right. And so I am advising them, they need to incorporate nutrition as part of what they offer. And their offerings are fantastic. They really are. But they really need to broaden and make people understand there is a root cause to mental health. There's not something wrong with you. You're not, too emotional or whatever. There's probably a physical cause. It could be a nutrient deficiency. Maybe your microbiome's messed up. Maybe there was a head trauma. There's a reason that you're having these particular issues that we like to put in the category of mental health. So I've got a whole chapter on mental health, and then a chapter just on aging, and how to consume the conventional healthcare optimally to really drive better health. So my book was the first thing. Got that done. That's coming out in a few weeks. So you can look at that. And that was kind of my manifesto, because I really needed all that background. I'm an actuary. I'm rooted in data and evidence. And so I felt I had to get all of this down to say, this is why I'm recommending what I'm recommending.
Right.
And so beyond that, I consult then to both these vendors, so these companies that have these kinds of solutions. Again, a lot of them are fantastic solutions, but the corporate market is kind of unique. And if you've not been in it, you kind of need to understand what an HR team at a business needs in order to put your program in place. So I'll advise them, but then I also advise employers, those that are open-minded enough to really shift the paradigm and really switch to put wellness first, more of a wellness first approach, and let's keep people out of the conventional health plan altogether. So
yes, absolutely.
What I'm
Love
focused
it.
on.
Nice. So I'm going to ask you for your contact information, but first, tell us the title of your book.
It's called How to Be a Healthy Human, and then what your doctor doesn't know about health and longevity.
Great. All right. Awesome. So tell us your contact information, website, social media, whatever you do in whatever way you put yourself out in the world.
Well, everything's really from my website. So my website is just simply emmatekstra.com, but it's Tekstra with a K, no X. So go there, and that will get you everywhere else. There's a link. I mean, the book's out on Amazon and stuff now, but start at the website. I've got a blog, so I write a lot of this. I'm just starting to write for the Epoch Times as well, if anybody's familiar with that. So, I love to write. I love to get, a different point of view out there, but start with my website. So emmatekstra.com. I've started Instagram. I'm not very good at social media, but you can find me on Instagram again, just Emma Tekstra. That's the best way to get hold of me.
Awesome. I love it. Well, before I let you go, is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to say, or any kind of words of wisdom that you want to say that I didn't ask? And it's okay if there isn't, but
not really. Only just encouragement that, I love what you're doing at NTI. I think absolutely you guys can be part of this big movement of change, part of the big shift that I feel. I think all of us have felt over the last couple of years, at least, that people are much more receptive now. There has to be another way. This that we've been doing for the last 50 years, it's not working. There has to be another way. And so I think you're really very well placed coming out of NTI with such a qualification, that the opportunities are really endless going forward.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. This was a great conversation. I really love all the places we went to, because I think it's, I think it's important that we recognize that, as you say, you really can't be healthy. You can't have wellness without having understanding about nutrition. And so many people are misled, misguided, and have a really severe misunderstanding of what eating healthy is. And that's what we're here for, at NTI. We are the ones who are going to tell people what actually that means. So a great...
And how powerful. How powerful just getting your nutrition right is, not only for preventing disease, but reversing disease as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Emma. You have a great rest of your day.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there, and thanks for listening today. If what you heard today inspires you to want to pursue an education in holistic nutrition here at Nutrition Therapy Institute, please check us out on our website, ntischool.com, and reach out to us at admissions@ntischool.com. Our in-depth, comprehensive education is sure to provide you with the knowledge and skills you need to create the work of your dreams. Do something that feeds your passion, aligns with your values, and fuels your drive for a vital and meaningful life. It will be rewarding for yourself, your family, and anyone else with whom you interact. And with that, see you on the next episode.